Sarah had always been drawn to the past. It called to her, a siren song of forgotten stories and faded grandeur. As a historian, she sought to unravel the threads of time. But her fascination went beyond mere academia. She believed the boundary between the living and the dead was thin. Sarah's grandmother had passed away recently. This left Sarah with a peculiar inheritance, an ancient house. The house stood at the edge of the town, shrouded in silence. It beckoned Sarah, promising whispers of the past. This inheritance was a doorway into her family's hidden history. The town was steeped in a silence so profound it was almost oppressive. The air hung heavy with unspoken words and forgotten tragedies. It was as if the town itself were holding its breath, guarding its secrets closely. The houses stood huddled together like mourners at a funeral, their windows dark and vacant. Weeds sprouted through cracks in the pavement, slowly reclaiming the forgotten paths. The only sound that dared to break the silence was the mournful cry of the wind as it whistled through the eaves of the old houses. Sarah's grandmother's house stood at the furthest edge of this forgotten town. It was a sprawling Victorian mansion, its once bright facade now weathered and gray. The garden, once a riot of color, was now a tangle of overgrown shrubs and gnarled trees. As Sarah stepped out of her car and onto the gravel driveway, she felt a shiver run down her spine. The silence seemed to press in on her, suffocating her. The house loomed over her, its windows like empty eyes watching her every move. The house was a labyrinth of dimly lit corridors and dusty rooms. Cobwebs hung from every corner, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. As Sarah explored, she felt an unsettling presence following her every move. It was as if the house itself was watching her, its unseen eyes tracking her every step. In a dusty attic room, tucked away in a forgotten corner, Sarah stumbled upon an old wooden chest. Inside, beneath layers of yellowed lace and moth-eaten velvet, she found a leather-bound diary. The diary belonged to her grandmother. Its pages were filled with spidery handwriting, chronicling her grandmother's life in the house. As Sarah read through the brittle pages, her blood ran cold. Her grandmother wrote of strange noises in the night, whispers and rustling sounds that seemed to come from within the walls themselves. She described seeing shadows moving in the periphery of her vision, shadows that vanished when she turned to confront them. One entry in particular sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. Her grandmother wrote of an antique mirror in the attic, a mirror that seemed to distort reality itself. She claimed that the mirror showed her glimpses of things that couldn't possibly be real, fleeting images of figures lurking in the shadows and faces staring out from the darkness beyond her reflection. Driven by a morbid curiosity, Sarah set out to find the mirror her grandmother had written about. It was as if the house itself was guiding her, leading her deeper into its heart. She found it in a room at the end of a long, dark corridor, hidden beneath a dust-covered sheet. The mirror was tall and ornate, its silver backing tarnished with age. The glass itself was cloudy, obscured by a patina of time. As Sarah drew closer, she felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The air around the mirror seemed to crackle with an unseen energy. Hesitantly, she reached out and touched its cold surface. As her fingers brushed against the glass, a jolt of static electricity shot up her arm, and the room seemed to grow colder. Looking into the mirror, Sarah saw more than just her reflection staring back. The glass seemed to ripple and distort, like water disturbed by a stone. For a fleeting moment, she could have sworn she saw a figure standing behind her, a tall, shadowy figure with eyes that glowed an unnatural red. She whirled around but found nothing but empty darkness. Night after night, the whispers grew louder, the shadows more distinct. They seemed to taunt her, toying with her sanity. Sarah knew she had stumbled upon something dark and ancient, something that refused to remain buried in the past. Desperate for answers, Sarah sought out the town's oldest resident, a wizened historian who lived in a small cottage on the outskirts of Silent Hollow. The historian, a man named Elias, had spent his life collecting stories and legends, the forgotten whispers of the town's past. Elias listened intently as Sarah described the strange occurrences in the house. His eyes, though clouded with age, held a sharp intelligence. When she finished, he sat back in his chair, his face etched with a mixture of sadness and fear. He confirmed Sarah's suspicions. The house was steeped in tragedy. A century ago, a family had been brutally murdered within the house's walls. The father, driven mad by grief and paranoia, had taken the lives of his wife and children before taking his own. The townsfolk whispered that their spirits, unable to find peace, remained trapped within the house, their anger and sorrow staining the very fabric of the building. Elias spoke of a curse that had fallen upon the house, a darkness that clung to it like a shroud. He warned Sarah that the spirits were restless, their pain palpable. He urged her to leave the house, to escape the darkness that threatened to consume her. Ignoring Elias's warnings, Sarah felt strangely compelled to help the trapped spirits. Driven by a mixture of fear and determination, she delved deeper into her grandmother's diary, searching for clues, for anything that could shed light on the darkness that consumed the house. The diary entries became increasingly frantic, filled with a growing terror that leapt from the pages. Her grandmother wrote of a ritual, a way to appease the spirits and break the curse that bound them to the house. It was a desperate gamble, but Sarah was determined to try. The supernatural events intensified. Objects moved on their own, propelled by unseen hands. Whispers morphed into disembodied voices, their icy breath chilling Sarah to the bone. The shadows grew bolder, no longer content to lurk in the periphery. They swirled around her, their forms shifting and contorting, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. One night, as Sarah lay in bed, paralyzed by fear, she felt a cold hand close around her throat. She opened her eyes to find a shadowy figure looming over her, its features twisted in a grotesque mockery of a human face. The figure leaned closer, its rancid breath filling her nostrils, and whispered, "Leave this place, or join us in our torment." Fear threatened to consume Sarah, but she clung to the words in her grandmother's diary. The ritual. It was her only hope. The diary described a ritual that had to be performed under the full moon, its light holding the power to pierce the veil between the worlds. It spoke of offerings placed on the attic floor, objects imbued with the memories of the deceased, talismans to appease their tormented souls. As the full moon bathed the attic room in its silvery light, Sarah gathered the offerings: a child's doll, a silver locket, a worn leather-bound book. She arranged them carefully on the floor, her heart pounding in her chest. Following the instructions in the diary, Sarah recited an ancient incantation, her voice trembling at first, then growing in strength. The air crackled with energy, and the shadows in the room seemed to writhe and coil as if alive. The mirror, its surface swirling like a whirlpool, reflected not Sarah's terrified face, but a scene of unimaginable horror. A blood-curdling scream tore through the silence, and the shadows coalesced into a single monstrous entity. It was a swirling vortex of darkness, its edges ragged and undefined, its eyes burning with an infernal fire. The malevolent entity lunged at Sarah, its icy claws outstretched. Fear lent Sarah a surge of adrenaline. She raised her hand, the silver locket glowing in the moonlight. As the entity drew close, she threw the locket at its heart, the epicenter of its swirling darkness. A blinding flash of light filled the room, followed by an ear-splitting crack that seemed to split the night in two. The monstrous entity let out an agonized wail as the locket pierced its darkness. It thrashed and convulsed, its form flickering like a dying flame. The shadows that made up its body recoiled, whipped away like smoke on the wind. As quickly as it had appeared, the entity vanished, leaving behind only the faint scent of ozone and the echo of its tortured screams. The house shuddered, as if releasing a breath it had been holding for a century. The air, thick with tension only moments before, felt lighter, cleansed. The oppressive silence that had hung over the house since Sarah's arrival lifted, replaced by a peaceful stillness. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the cracks in the boarded-up windows, Sarah made her way downstairs. The house, once a place of shadows and fear, felt different. It was as if the spirits that had haunted its halls for so long had finally found peace. Sarah stood on the porch of the old house, the rising sun painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. The town of Silent Hollow, no longer shrouded in an oppressive silence, seemed to awaken with the dawn. Birds sang in the trees, and the wind carried the scent of blooming honeysuckle. The house, once a symbol of sorrow and fear, now stood bathed in the warm glow of the morning light. It was as if the darkness that had clung to it for so long had finally been lifted, replaced by a sense of peace Sarah had never thought possible. As Sarah prepared to leave Silent Hollow, she made a silent vow to the spirits who had haunted the house. She would share their story, ensuring that their suffering and their eventual peace would not be forgotten. The diary, a testament to their pain and their release, would serve as the foundation for her work, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most ordinary lives. And so, Sarah, the historian with a passion for the supernatural, left the town of Silent Hollow, carrying with her the weight of the spirits' stories and the knowledge that some shadows, once confronted, can be brought into the light. The whispers, once filled with sorrow and anger, now seemed to echo with gratitude, carried on the wind that swept through the town, a promise whispered on the breeze.